as college was ending, I set up a plan, to join an RTC, and we took a couple of visits to a couple different places, and I made a family decision based on my addiction.
I, at the time, thought it was the best fit for our family, and quickly learned that it was the worst fit.
As we moved to Lehigh and I dove in with the Lehigh Valley Wrestling Club, that was my first professional job as an RTC athlete.
And quickly after moving there, it just wasn't the same.
I knew if I lived here, my probation's gonna be down. It's not gonna be as harsh. I'm gonna basically be able to do whatever I want 24/7. I had to be high all the time. I couldn't be at practice, not on it, because I'd be sick. I was spending hours a day out of the house to make sure that I had what I needed so I couldn't be sick when I was around people.
And I kept asking, hey, what's going on? Or we'd be in the car and he'd be closing his eyes while he's driving. And I'm like, what are you doing? Why are your eyes closed while you're driving with the kids in the car? And he's like, I'm just tired, I had such a hard workout.
I think I'm gonna have this professional career in wrestling and do really well. I'm still living on this dream of being a world champ, but thinking I was gonna be able to do this too. Instead of that first guy in the practice, last guy out type attitude, I started becoming the last guy in, be the first guy out because I wanted to go use again. Everything in my life was revolved around it.
And then it just kept getting more weird and kept getting more I don't know, I just had a gut feeling. So every once in a while I'd be like, hey, I need to go get groceries. I'm gonna take your car. And I would take his car. And I would go and I would sit in the parking lot at the grocery store. And I would just do it out on a whim so that I'd find something. I'm maybe he's on drugs again. I don't know. I just knew something wasn't right. And I would start searching through the glove box, throwing things apart, searching all through his car. Couldn't find anything.
She knew stuff was going on. She was going through my house trying to really figure out, pinpoint, they actually have hard evidence of what I was doing.
He'd come home from practice. I'd be like, here, can you watch one of the boys? And I'd go and I'd rip his wrestling bag apart. Couldn't find anything.
Our relationship was so rocky at that point because of all that gaslighting I was doing and letting her think she's crazy even though she was 100% right.
Okay, maybe I'm just crazy. Maybe I'm the problem.
I'd be in weird areas waiting for an hour or two, making up some story all the time. I was running my dealers out of everything. I had dealers tell me that I needed to go to rehab. Dude, you buy us out of everything all week. You're pissing off our other customers. Well, I don't really care. Do you got anything else?
Couldn't prove anything. He kept telling me I was crazy. I could just feel it in my gut though. I just knew something just wasn't quite right.
I accepted I had a problem, but I couldn't change it at the 2019 US Open down in Fort Worth, Texas.
Underway, quarterfinals.
We're at the US Open in Texas. It's the qualifier for the Olympic trials. And I was high leading into the event. I win my first couple matches, I'm in the quarters, wrestling a guy I've beaten before. And all I'm thinking about is I know I can't pass a drug test tomorrow if I win.
And Chance needs a little time. He's been battling some injuries.
And I want to get high tonight. And so I know I'm definitely not going to pass the test. I basically let the dude take me down, turn me.
And looking on that gut left side after transition, goes left to right. Great gut wrench. Left to right gut, 8-0.
I was getting through the wrestling. I know I could have won the match, and I know I could have continued the day and probably won the tournament. But I couldn't stand feeling the way I was, and it was so heavy on my mind that I needed to go get high that I forfeited right out in the middle of the match. It was like that. Yeah, my shoulder's too bad, I can't wrestle.
And they're looking at Chance again here. Oh, they're gonna call it.
And go out and I used that night. All I remember is I will never forget that feeling of that was when I had kind of given up on myself completely. almost when I had kind of given up on myself completely.
Yeah. It's in the throes of addiction, right? You know, that's... Yeah, I remember that. I do remember that match really well now, because I remember Jeff and I were just like, wow, he forfeited out. This is it, right? So, and at that time, you don't know how injured a person is or not. But that's what addiction will do. It'll lie to you too. It'll tell you you're no good. They're all lies, right? But that's what addiction does. Guys, that breaks my heart, because that's tough to watch right there.
The next morning was like the first morning I ever couldn't look at myself in the mirror, because that's the point where I sacrificed my lifelong goal so that I could remain high, but I couldn't stop until I was pushed into it.
I guess like when we get into like right before things happen, because that's kind of when I really knew something wasn't right. So like COVID happened, and you know, nobody could go anywhere. We were kind of stuck in the house doing nothing. And at our house, we had like a backyard, and like up the hill, you could tell that there was a fire pit previously there. So we fixed up this fire pit, and the one night I gotten the kids to bed, I was like, why don't we like just have like a, you know, stay home date, you know, like we'll go up to the fire pit, like have some snacks, just kind of sit there and just, you know, hang out. And he's like, okay, like I'm gonna run to the gas station and grab some candy and like some snacks and stuff. And I'm like, okay, cool, like I'll get this fire started, and when you get back, come up there and we can just hang out. He pulled into the driveway from the gas station and never came up to the fire pit. So I'm like, what is he doing? And I go down and I find him, he's like sleeping in his car. And I'm like, yo, what are you doing? Like, why didn't you come up? Like, the fire's ready, like, what are you doing? And like, he kind of answered me, but it was just kind of like a, like one of those, and I'm just like, okay. And I kind of got upset and just kind of like dumped water on the fire. I don't know what's wrong with you, but like, I don't know why you would intentionally hurt my feelings like that. Like, that's just not who he is.
And there's probably some signs early on, and then all of a sudden, you know, COVID hits, and then boom, we don't see anybody, including our team, for about 7-8 months. Then you start hearing rumors.
When I thought it couldn't get any worse, like COVID exponentially changed it even more. We're off to the races. I was doing probably so much fentanyl that like, I think would kill most human beings. You know, I was supposed to be going helping out some kids that day, and this was the first time in a while I couldn't get what I needed. When you get that way, when I'm going through withdrawal, like the two things, like my bones just feel like they're gonna snap.
Addiction in general, I liken it to being hijacked.
Probably the very worst thing is like just the frenzy in your head. Like,
You don't get to make the decisions.
it is so stuck on like somebody just poking you over and over and over again, like the frenzy of like, these feelings aren't gonna stop until you get high.
So I get this call that, hey, he was at a clinic, he didn't seem right. Like, he was just kind of mumbling his words, he just seemed off.
My one dealer was at absolutely everything, yeah. I was losing my mind, and I ended up taking fake Xanax.
Addiction, it will veer you off the road.
I'm driving up to go do my lessons, and I wrecked my car.
It's really destructive.
I get taken to jail. And COVID was such a weird time that these dudes, they let me out of jail. Like, I wasn't like bailed out, like they let me out after I was charged with DUI, and I'm still out of my mind. And I walk in the house and I start arguing with Jen, and
I was in the middle of washing my hair actually, and he shows up. I'm like, how did you get home? Where did you come from? And he was like, I've got to go get my stuff out of my car. And I'm like, wait, no, you're not going anywhere. Like, we need to talk about this.
I take her keys.
Before I could even get out of the shower, put a towel around me to go outside and say, what are you doing? He was already gone. And he he was just so insistent on getting back to his wrestling bag. And I'm like, what is so important about this wrestling bag? Like, what is going on? What are you doing? Like, why would you go back there? Like, why are you so fixated on this bag?
For some reason, I basically went back to the same spot. Half a mile where I wrecked the last car, I wrecked this car 3 hours later.
Both accidents happened and him getting released from jail twice within like a 3-hour time span. After the second time, they called me and were like, so when are you gonna come get him?
This was like the beginning of what I would say is the end. And this is like the point where obviously she knows something's been up. I have to come clean, tell her exactly what's been up.
I still didn't know he was addicted to heroin. I still didn't know he was doing it every day, all day. It was like my whole world was kind of just like rocked, and like, I mean, I knew, like I said, I knew something just wasn't right for a little while. After everything happened, it was like, well, how long is it gonna take till Lehigh finds out?
Shortly after the accident, we're up to see Chance. He came out, he was very open, he was very broken, very apologetic. He was in tears. He hit rock bottom at that point.
At that point, I was pretty much out. I was done. I was sleeping in the guest room, for being honest, because I just was so done.
I think rock bottom for him was scary because it was probably the first time that he realized that he could not have his wife and children because of the choices that he's making.
He was a broken man right now. He was fighting for his family at this point, and things were not going well. And he opened up about everything. Obviously, he couldn't continue to compete for the LVWC, but at the same time, there's people that wanted to help him, right? Part of this group, which is pretty special. They didn't just want to write him off.
I told my family I need to go to rehab. Like, I know I do. Like, and to them, like, I think they knew it was bad, but didn't know how bad it was.
At that point, I just was like, all hands on deck, like, go ahead, go to rehab, go do what you need to do, and hopefully this, works. Because like the first time it was honestly like a joke. This like has to be like your saving grace at this point. Like you've got to go do something, try to fix whatever you can fix. And at that point, I didn't know if there was any fixing between him and I.
What do the next 10 years look like for an individual in that state? Are they successful? Do they get sober? Do they go to prison? Do they go to jail? Do they have a family? Do they die?
I knew as soon as I walked through that door, like, I knew I wanted to be better for a while. I didn't know how to do it, but I knew as soon as I stepped through that door, that was how I did it. Like, take the first step.
He realized he didn't want to be this person.
I just knew I was gonna be okay. Cause like, I got here. On my own will, on my own accord, this is what I wanna do with my life. Most people had given up on me at this point. So I knew at this point, like, if I didn't do it for me, ain't nobody else doing it for me. My counselor, after she dug into my story a good bit and, figured out a lot about me, she pulled up this TED Talk. The guy's name's Tony Hoffman, and he did a TED Talk on the stigma of addiction.
This young man is about to use heroin with his gutter water. What do the next 10 years look like for an individual in that state?
And he opens up this TED Talk about how he's on the front page of the biggest BMX magazine by the time he was 18. Goes down this path of heroin and oxys and ends up in jail, and it just reminded me, I was on the front page of Win twice by the time I was at the age of 18. Right away, it's hit home.
And I was confronted by stigmas. A cop called me into the office when she heard about what I was talking about with 8 other cops in the office. She says, hey, we hear when you get out of here, you're gonna race BMX professionally and go to the Olympics. I said, that's right. She said, no, you're not. Don't fool yourself, kid. You're gonna come back in here just like everybody else. But I walked back to my bunk and I said, don't listen to that lady.
And his story was the first time I ever heard my story through somebody else's mouth that I just related to so much. And I just remember like this pain coming out of me. Like I just broke down and cried and cried and cried like a baby, like to my counselor. Because I finally was like, dude, I'm not alone. Like there's always this notion in the back of my head, like you're never gonna be back on the page of a magazine again. I didn't know, like, can you make it back? I don't know, no one's ever told me they did.
All right, if I get you though, Red Rover, send Easton over. Okay, Red Rover, send Blue Shirt over. What do you want then, dude? Yeah, they're mama's boys.
When I got done with rehab, somehow Jen, she met me and picked me up. That was really kind of the start of like us growing our family again.
Hey, no, what are you doing? You guys want to play tag?
Finishing out those like 30 days, I was starting to see Chance again. I could see the dad that I always knew he could be.
Let's see the running one.
And the partner that I always knew he could be. Like it was all starting to finally, like I could finally see it.
Show him your dance moves.
And I think that was one thing that he really did well of when he got sober, putting wrestling last. And I know that had to have been like the hardest thing he's ever done because that's all he does. I mean, he literally like starts to get like the itch after like 2 days of not being on the mat. I think for so long, he was always just like defined by his wrestling. Obviously so, he's pretty good at it, you know? So like it kind of makes sense, but also like you have to be able to see who you are other than that. And I think once I could start seeing who I knew he was all the time, like I think things started to kind of click. Towards the end of like being in the thick of things, I kind of questioned like, will he ever wrestle again? Because like, is somebody gonna take another chance on him?